50,000 years ago, a small group of humans is walking through unfamiliar land. They've been walking for generations, moving out of Africa, following rivers and coastlines toward places no one in their family has ever seen. One morning, they find footprints that aren't theirs. Not deer, not any animal they know. Footprints from something walking upright, on two legs but built differently than anyone in their group. Shorter, broader, heavier in the shoulders. They don't know it yet, but they are about to become one of the only groups in history to meet another species of human face to face. Because here's something most people never learn in school. For almost all of human history, we were not alone. Multiple different species of humans lived on Earth at the same time. Right now, today, you are the only human species left. But that has only been true for about the last 30,000 years. Before that, for hundreds of thousands of years, there were several of us. And when our ancestors finally met one of the others, something happened that changed what it means to be human forever. Let's back up. Homo sapiens, our species, first appeared in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. But we weren't the only humans on the planet. In Europe and parts of Asia, Neanderthals had already been living for over 400,000 years, perfectly adapted to cold climates, strong, and as we'll get to, smarter than history gave them credit for. Deep in Siberia, a completely different group we now call Denisovans lived in the same cave system for tens of thousands of years. We only know they existed because of a single finger bone and two teeth. On the island of Flores, in Indonesia, an entirely separate, much smaller human species survived in isolation, barely over 3 feet tall, nicknamed hobbits by the scientists who found them. And in parts of Asia, populations of Homo erectus, one of the oldest human species, were still hanging on, having already existed for almost 2 million years. So picture the map. At one single moment in time, there were at least 5 different human species alive on Earth simultaneously. We were just one of them. So what did meeting one of them actually look like? Let's start with the Neanderthals, since they're the ones we know the most about. A Neanderthal was shorter than the average Homo sapiens, but significantly stronger, thicker bones, more powerful muscles, built for a harsh Ice Age climate. Their brow ridges were heavier. Their noses were wider, likely an adaptation for warming cold air before it reached the lungs. And here's the detail that surprises people the most. Their brains were, on average, slightly larger than ours. Not less intelligent, not primitive, just different, and built for a different world. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, were taller, leaner, built more for endurance than raw strength bodies made for long-distance travel, tracking, and following herds across entire continents. 2 different builds, 2 different toolkits, 2 different ways of surviving the same ice age. And somewhere in the Middle East, or possibly Southern Europe, those 2 different ways of being human were about to come face to face for the very first time. So what actually happened when they met? For decades, scientists assumed the answer was simple: conflict. Bigger brains, better tools. Homo sapiens wins, Neanderthals lose. Case closed. But the real answer, the one hiding in our own DNA, turned out to be far stranger than a simple war. Because we didn't just meet the Neanderthals. In a shockingly large number of cases, we had children with them. This wasn't confirmed until 2010, when a team led by geneticist Svante Pääbo successfully sequenced the entire Neanderthal genome reconstructed from ancient bone fragments tens of thousands of years old. It was one of the most difficult genetic sequencing projects ever attempted. Ancient DNA degrades badly over time, contaminated by bacteria, fungi, and thousands of years of decay. And when the sequence was finally complete, they compared it to the DNA of living humans today. The results stunned the entire field of anthropology. Nearly every person on Earth whose ancestry traces outside of Africa carries Neanderthal DNA, not metaphorically, literally, physically, right now. Inside your cells, if your ancestors left Africa, somewhere between 1% and 2% of your genome came directly from Neanderthals. Pääbo would go on to win the Nobel Prize in 2022 for this work, for proving that 2 human species didn't just coexist, they merged. And this wasn't just leftover, meaningless genetic debris. Some of the Neanderthal genes we carry are still doing real work in our bodies today. Certain immune system genes, ones that help modern humans fight off specific viruses and infections, came directly from Neanderthal ancestors, who had already spent hundreds of thousands of years adapting to the diseases of Europe and Asia before we ever arrived. Genes affecting skin tone and hair in populations outside of Africa also trace back to this interbreeding. Even something as specific as a slightly higher genetic risk for certain blood clotting conditions and, Controversially, certain outcomes with COVID-19 infection severity has been traced back to Neanderthal DNA still present in the human genome today. We didn't just meet another species of human. We absorbed a piece of them and carried it forward for 50,000 years without any of us knowing it until 2010. And Neanderthals were only the beginning. Remember the Denisovans, the species known only from a single finger bone in a Siberian cave? Their DNA turned up too. Populations in Tibet carry a Denisovan gene that helps their bodies use oxygen efficiently at extremely high altitude. A genetic gift passed down from a species we've still never found a complete skeleton of. Populations in Papua New Guinea and parts of the Pacific Islands carry up to 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA, the highest amount of any human population on Earth today. We have never found a Denisovan face. We don't know what they looked like. We know they existed almost entirely because of what they left behind, inside us. So if we were having children together, sharing genes, sharing land, why are Neanderthals and Denisovans gone? And we're still here? The honest answer is that scientists are still debating this. And there probably isn't one single reason. Homo sapiens populations were likely larger and more interconnected, trading, communicating, and sharing innovations across huge distances. Neanderthal populations, by contrast, appear to have lived in small, more isolated groups, which made them more vulnerable to sudden climate shifts, disease, or simple bad luck wiping out an entire community at once. Rapid climate swings at the end of the last ice age may have destroyed the specific ecosystems Neanderthals depended on faster than they could adapt. And there's a stranger possibility too. Maybe Neanderthals didn't fully disappear at all. Maybe, in small numbers, generation after generation, they were gradually absorbed into larger Homo sapiens populations until there were simply no purely Neanderthal groups left to count as a separate species. Which brings us back to that first meeting. Two different kinds of human standing in the same valley 50,000 years ago, looking at something familiar and completely foreign at the same time. We don't know if that first encounter was fear, or curiosity, or violence, or something closer to recognition. But we know how the story ended. Not with one species wiping out the other, with two species becoming, in a small but permanent way, one. So the next time you look in a mirror, consider this. If your ancestry traces outside Africa, some small part of what's looking back at you isn't purely Homo sapiens at all. It's the last surviving trace of someone else entirely a different kind of human who met us once, tens of thousands of years ago, and never really left. If this made you think, hit like and subscribe. Bob Wonders has a lot more questions to ask.